Hi, my name is Chloe and I'm the book reviewer. My role in this presentation is to evaluate how effective the opening chapter of Goodbye Tsugumi is as an introduction to the novel. Overall, I think the chapter is very effective, although not in the most typical way. Instead of slowly introducing the story and making readers feel more comfortable, the novel creates tension and emotional discomfort almost immediately. Right from the beginning, the chapter feels reflective and emotionally intense. Maria narrates the story while looking back on her memories of Tsugumi and her childhood in the seaside town, which creates a nostalgic atmosphere. I think this opening is successful because it immediately makes readers curious about both Tsugumi and Maria's complicated relationship with her. The opening line is especially important. Tsugumi really was an unpleasant young woman. Most novels try to make readers sympathize with the main character immediately, but this chapter does the opposite. Maria openly describes Tsugumi as rude, selfish, manipulative, and difficult, even though this could potentially push readers away. I think it actually creates curiosity because readers immediately start wondering why Maria still cares about Tsugumi so much and why she's choosing to tell this story. I also think the opening is effective because it introduces emotional conflict right away, instead of presenting a simple or idealized relationship. The chapter immediately shows a relationship that is complicated, frustrating, and emotionally layered. One of the strongest parts of the chapter is Tsugumi herself. She's a very contradictory character. She can be cruel, manipulative, and emotionally exhausting, but she's also physically weak and expected to die young. Maria also describes her as beautiful and almost fragile at times, especially during scenes near the ocean. Because of this, readers constantly switch between disliking Tsugumi and feeling sympathy for her. I think this emotional complexity is one of the reasons the chapter is so effective. Tsugumi doesn't feel like a simple good or bad character. Instead, she feels unpredictable and emotionally realistic. I also think her illness affects the way she behaves, since her family has always treated her carefully and spoiled her because of her condition. Tsugumi developed a personality that is very intense and difficult. This doesn't excuse her actions, but it helps explain why she behaves the way she does. The most emotional part of the chapter is probably the haunted mailbox scene. After Maria's grandfather dies, Tsugumi secretly creates a fake letter in his handwriting and convinces Maria that it may have appeared supernaturally. This scene is emotionally powerful because it mixes manipulation with grief and vulnerability. On one hand, Tsugumi's actions are cruel because she is emotionally manipulating Maria during a very difficult and painful period. But at the same time, the amount of effort that she puts into the letter, teaching herself calligraphy, practicing the handwriting, and running through the rain to deliver it, shows emotional intensity and desperation for connection. The scene becomes even more important when Tsugumi apologizes and says, "Sorry, Maria," because she almost never apologizes for anything. The moment changes how both Maria and the reader understand her character. Suddenly, she seems less emotionally invincible and more vulnerable. Even though the chapter is emotionally powerful, it also has some weaknesses. One weakness is that the structure can feel fragmented because the story moves between present narration, childhood memories, and philosophical reflection. At times, the chapter feels more like a collection of memories rather than a straightforward plot. Some readers might also struggle with Tsugumi's personality because she is intentionally difficult to like. Her cruelty and manipulative behavior can sometimes feel overwhelming. However, I personally think these weaknesses also contribute to the realism of the novel. Memory and emotion are usually messy and disorganized rather than perfectly structured. I also think the slower pacing fits the reflective tone of the story. The chapter focuses more on emotions, atmosphere, and relationships than action, which strengthens the emotional realism of the novel. Overall, I think the opening chapter is very effective, as it creates emotional complexity instead of giving readers a simple introduction to the story. Tsugumi is difficult but very unforgettable, and the chapter does a really good job of making readers curious about her relationship with Maria. I also think the atmosphere of the seaside town and Maria's reflective narration make the story feel emotionally immersive, even though the structure can feel confusing at times. The emotional depth, character complexity, and strong atmosphere make the opening memorable and compelling. By the end of the chapter, readers are left with a strong emotional impression of Tsugumi, which is why I think the opening succeeds artistically and emotionally.